There is a list that goes around every single year. Best places to retire in Arizona. You have seen it. Same names, same photographs, same handful of towns, and every one of them is now expensive, crowded, and full of people who arrived for exactly the same reason you would. Here is the part that never makes the list. The people in this state who are quietly doing the best, who spend the least, who have the shortest drive to a doctor and the mildest summers, and neighbors who actually knock on the door, are mostly living in towns no magazine has ever ranked. Not because those towns are bad, because nobody bothered to look. So this is 12 of them. 12 Arizona towns that almost never appear on a retirement list, where the people who found them are thriving, and where your money still buys a life instead of a mortgage payment. And number 1 has the mildest climate in the entire state. Not the cheapest, not the prettiest, the mildest by the actual numbers. Better than Phoenix, better than Tucson, better than anywhere people are told to go. Almost nobody moves there, and by the end of this, you will understand exactly why that is a mistake. One rule, the same one every time. You get both halves. Every town here has something real that makes it work, and every town here has a catch. If somebody tells you a place has no catch, they are selling you a house. Let us start at number 12. Number 12, Willcox. An hour east of Tucson, out where the interstate runs through open grassland, there is a town of about 3,000 people that most Arizonans have driven past without slowing down. They are missing something. Willcox sits at roughly 4,200 feet. That elevation is the whole story. It is high enough that summer afternoons stay meaningfully cooler than the valley floor, high enough that the nights actually cool off, and high enough that you get 4 distinct seasons instead of 2. There are people here who moved from Phoenix specifically so they could stop hiding indoors for 4 months a year. And then there is the thing almost nobody outside the state knows. This is Arizona wine country. Not a novelty, not a gimmick. The overwhelming majority of wine grapes grown in this state come out of this valley, and the tasting rooms along the main street pull people in from Tucson and Phoenix every weekend. If your picture of retirement involves a Saturday afternoon somewhere pleasant with a glass of something local, that already exists here, and it costs a fraction of what it costs in California. Housing is the other half of it. Prices here are among the lowest you will find in any Arizona town that still has a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a hospital. The catch is real. This is a small town in a rural county, and the medical care available reflects that. There is a hospital, but for anything specialized, you are driving to Tucson, and that is a real commitment on a regular schedule. Retail is limited. If you want a choice of restaurants on a Tuesday night, this is not that. Willcox rewards the person who wants space, sky, cool nights, and a slower week, and who is honest with themselves about the drive. Number 11, Benson. 45 minutes southeast of Tucson, right on the interstate, sitting at about 3,600 feet. Benson is what a lot of people are actually looking for when they say they want a small town. They just never heard the name. It is small, around 5,000 people, but it is not isolated. Tucson is close enough for a hospital appointment, an airport, a real supermarket, or a grandchild's graduation, and close enough that you do not plan your whole day around it. The elevation buys you the same relief Willcox does. Summers here are hot, but they are not the valley. Winters are mild. You can garden. People do. The San Pedro River runs nearby, and it is one of the best birding corridors in North America. That sounds like a small thing until you meet the people who organize their entire retirement around it. Kartchner Caverns is minutes away. The town has a genuine small downtown, not a strip. The honest catch is that Benson is a highway town, and it feels like one in places. The freight trains run through, and they run at night, so you check the map before you buy. and the town has been discovered enough that it is no longer the bargain it was 5 years ago. But if you want quiet without being cut off, Benson is one of the most sensible addresses in southern Arizona. Number 10, Safford and Thatcher. Out in the Gila Valley, in the southeastern corner of the state, about 2.5 hours from Tucson, there are two towns sitting side by side that function as one community. Together, they are the reason this entry works. Start with what is behind them. Mount Graham rises to nearly 11,000 feet directly above the valley. That is not a hill, that is a mountain, with pine forest, a road to the top, campgrounds, and air that is 30 degrees cooler than the valley floor on the worst day of August. People here do something that sounds impossible in Arizona. On a brutal summer afternoon, they drive 45 minutes and put on a jacket. Down in the valley, you have irrigated farmland, which means green, which means the landscape does not look like the pictures in your head. There is a regional hospital, there is a community college. Housing costs are among the lowest in the state for a place with actual services. And here is the part that matters more than any of it, and that I cannot show you in a photograph. These are old, rooted, church-centered farming communities where people still notice when a neighbor stops coming outside. If your fear about moving somewhere new at 70 is that you will be invisible, this is close to the opposite of that. The catch is distance. You are a long way from a major airport and a long way from specialized medicine. Winter nights get genuinely cold, and a tightly knit community takes real effort to enter from the outside. It is warm, but it is not automatic. Safford and Thatcher are for someone who wants to be known by name. Number 9, Snowflake and Taylor. Up on the Colorado Plateau in the northeastern part of the state, at about 5,600 feet, two more towns that operate as one. And yes, it snows. That surprises people who think Arizona is one climate. Up here you get 4 real seasons, cold winters, and summers where the high sits in the 80s instead of the hundreds. There are retirees in these towns who came from Phoenix after 20 years and describe that as the single best decision of their lives. The name, for the record, has nothing to do with weather. It comes from 2 of the founding families. Nobody up here gets tired of explaining that. What you get? Extremely low housing costs, enormous lots, clean air, dark skies, and the same rooted community texture as the Gila Valley. The pine country around Show Low and the White Mountains is a short drive, which means summer weekends in the trees are ordinary rather than an expedition. The catch is the one you would expect. You will shovel. Winter is real and it lasts. Services are thin, and for serious medical care you are looking at Show Low nearby for the basics and a much longer haul for anything complex. The economy is small. If your dream is a warm, dry winter, do not come here. If your dream is the 4 seasons you grew up with, at a price you can actually afford, without ice storms and without a state income tax on your pension, this is one of the best kept arrangements in the American West. Number 8, Camp Verde. Right in the middle of the state, on Interstate 17, halfway between Phoenix and Flagstaff, sitting at about 3,100 feet. Everyone in the Verde Valley talks about Sedona. Camp Verde is 25 minutes from Sedona and costs a completely different amount of money. The elevation gives you the same climate advantage you have heard 3 times already, and it works the same way. Hot summers, but not valley summers. Mild winters you can be outside in. What is unusual here is the water. The Verde River runs through it, and there are actual green cottonwood corridors, actual shade, actual sound of moving water in a state where that is rare enough to be worth planning around. The location is the real asset. Phoenix is roughly 90 minutes south for a specialist or an airport. Flagstaff and cool pine country is roughly an hour north. Sedona and Jerome and the Wine Trail are minutes away. You are not choosing between access and quiet. You are getting both. The catch. Camp Verde itself is not a charming historic downtown. It is spread out and it is plainer than its neighbors, which is precisely why it is affordable. Interstate noise reaches parts of town, and the Verde Valley has been discovered, so prices have moved. Camp Verde is the practical man's Sedona, and practical is what actually works at 70. Number 7. Wickenburg. An hour northwest of Phoenix, at about 2,000 feet, on the edge of where the desert starts to break into hills. Wickenburg has a quality that is very hard to manufacture and that most Arizona towns lost decades ago. It is a real town with a real center. Brick buildings, a main street you can walk, a historic hotel, a museum that is genuinely good, and a Western heritage that the town lives rather than performs for tourists. The number that matters to you. Phoenix is an hour away. That means every specialist, every hospital, every airport gate, and every big box store in the 5th largest metropolitan area in the country is inside a comfortable drive, and you still go to sleep somewhere quiet. At 2,000 feet, you get a small but real break from the valley heat, and winters are close to ideal. The horse culture here is serious, and if that has ever been part of your picture of retirement, this is one of the few places in the state where it is still normal rather than expensive. There is also something here that does not show up in any listing. Wickenburg has a community of people who chose it, and the town runs on volunteers. Events, the museum, the rodeo, the historical society. If you arrive willing to do something useful with a Thursday morning, you will know 40 people inside a year. That is not a small consideration when you have just left behind every friend you made in a working life. The catch is honest. 2,000 feet is not 5,000 feet. Summer here is still hot, properly hot, and if you were hoping to escape that entirely, this is not the answer. The town is small enough that a bad medical week means driving to Phoenix. And Wickenburg is not a secret, so it is not cheap by rural Arizona standards. But for someone who wants a town with a spine, an hour from everything, this is one of the strongest addresses on this list. Number 6, Clarkdale. Also in the Verde Valley, next to Cottonwood, at about 3,500 feet, and this one is unusual enough to be worth explaining properly. Clarkdale was built as a company town for the smelter, and it was built by someone who cared. It was laid out on purpose in the 1920s, with a park in the middle, a grid you can walk, mature trees along the streets, and small, solid houses that were designed for people rather than for a sales brochure. Almost nothing in Arizona looks like this, because almost nothing in Arizona was planned this way. What that gives you today is genuinely rare. Sidewalks, shade, a town square, neighbors within sight of your porch. If you grew up in a small American town in the 1950s and you have quietly assumed that feeling no longer exists anywhere you could afford, drive through Clarkdale once. Cottonwood is next door with the grocery stores and the medical center. Jerome is up the hill. Sedona is 20 minutes. The Verde River is right there. The catch: it is very small, and small means limited. There is little in the way of shopping or dining inside the town itself, so you are running to Cottonwood constantly. Housing stock is old, which means real maintenance on real houses. And because the Verde Valley is now fashionable, the bargain is thinner than it was. Clarkdale is for the person who wants a neighborhood, not just a house. Number 5, Payson. 90 minutes northeast of Phoenix, at roughly 5,000 feet, sitting directly beneath the Mogollon Rim. This is the one Phoenix already knows about and most of the country does not. The rim is a 200-mile escarpment covered in the largest continuous Ponderosa pine forest on Earth, and Payson sits at the base of it. You are in the pines, in Arizona, 90 minutes from Sky Harbor. Summer highs here run in the 80s and low 90s, while the valley is over 110. That is not a marginal improvement, that is a different life. It is the difference between watching the afternoon through a window and sitting out in it. Winters are mild with occasional snow that melts. 4 seasons, none of them punishing. And that 90-minute number is the reason this ranks so high. Every serious medical facility in the state is a manageable drive. Your children can visit without an ordeal. You are not choosing isolation to get the climate. The catch is that Payson has been found. Phoenix money has been buying weekend houses here for 40 years, and prices reflect it. So this is not the bargain that Willcox or Snowflake is. The town itself is functional rather than beautiful, strung along the highway. And the fire risk in pine country is real, and it is getting more real. You will pay attention to insurance here in a way you would not elsewhere. Payson is the best climate-to-access ratio in Arizona, and you pay for it.
Number 4, Tubac.
45 minutes south of Tucson, at about 3,300 feet in the Santa Cruz River Valley, there is a village of roughly 1,200 people that operates on a completely different logic from everywhere else on this list. Tubac is an arts colony. It has been one for over 60 years. Somewhere around 100 galleries, studios, and shops are packed into a few walkable blocks of adobe courtyards, and this is not a gift shop operation. Working artists live here. The place has a real cultural gravity that pulls people down from Tucson every weekend of the season. Now think about what that actually means for a retirement. The single hardest thing about moving somewhere new at 68 is not the house or the weather. It is walking into a town where every friendship was formed in 1982. Tubac has the opposite problem. It is a village full of people who also arrived from somewhere else, who came for the same reason you did, and who are already in the habit of meeting strangers. That is worth more than any amount of square footage. The setting helps. The Santa Cruz Valley is green in a way that surprises people, ringed by mountains, with birding that draws serious people from across the country. It is walkable. There is a golf resort. Tucson is close enough that a specialist appointment is a normal morning rather than an expedition. And there is a quieter advantage that people only notice after a year. In a village this size, you are recognized. The person in the gallery knows your name. The person at the post office knows your name. And if you do not turn up for a week, somebody asks about it. That is a form of security that no alarm system provides, and that most American neighborhoods stopped offering around 1980. The catch is that Tubac is expensive by rural Arizona standards, because everyone who arrives can see exactly what it is. It is tiny, so daily errands mean Green Valley or Tucson. It is close to the border, and depending on how you feel about that, it is either a complete non-issue or something you want to look at with your own eyes before you decide. Go and see it yourself, rather than deciding from a headline. Tubac solves the loneliness problem better than anywhere else in this state. Number 3. Bisbee. Down in the far southeastern corner, almost on the border, at about 5,500 feet, built into the walls of a canyon. Nothing else in Arizona looks like this, and nothing else in Arizona feels like this. Bisbee was a copper town, one of the richest in the world for a while, and when the mine closed, the town did not collapse. Artists moved into it because it was cheap and because it was beautiful, and what exists now is a small Victorian city stacked up a hillside, full of ornate old buildings, staircases, a real theater, real restaurants, and a population that is intensely proud of the place. The climate is the part almost nobody expects. At 5,500 feet, Bisbee has summers in the 80s and winters that are cool but mild. There are houses in this town with no air conditioning at all, because none was ever needed in Arizona. Think about what that does to a fixed income when the electric bill in Phoenix in July can run into the hundreds. It is walkable in a way essentially no other town in the state is. You can live here and use your car for errands rather than for existence. For anyone who has quietly started to wonder how many more years of comfortable driving they have left, that is not a lifestyle preference. That is the whole question. Now the catch, and it is a serious one, so I want to be direct about it. Bisbee is built on a hillside, and the old town runs on staircases. Some of the most beautiful houses in this town are reached by climbing. If you have knees that are already telling you things, or if you are planning for the version of yourself that is 85 rather than 65, you need to look very carefully at the specific street and the specific house, rather than falling in love with the town in general. There are flatter neighborhoods here, and they exist for exactly this reason. The other catch is distance. Tucson is about 90 minutes. There is a hospital in town for the basics, but anything complex is that drive. And Bisbee is genuinely small. Bisbee is the most charming town in Arizona, and the one that most rewards buying with your head instead of your heart. Number 2. Green Valley. 25 minutes south of Tucson at about 2,900 feet, and this one is on the list for a reason that has nothing to do with charm. Green Valley was built for exactly one purpose. It is a retirement community, started in the 60s, and it now holds something in the range of 20,000 people, the overwhelming majority of them over 60. Everything here was designed around that fact. Here is why it belongs in an episode about towns nobody talks about. Everyone has heard of Sun City. Almost nobody outside Arizona has heard of Green Valley, and by several measures, Green Valley is the better proposition. It sits at nearly 3,000 feet, so summers, while hot, are noticeably softer than the Phoenix Valley where Sun City sits. It is 25 minutes from Tucson rather than an hour across a metropolitan area. And the recreation infrastructure is extraordinary for the price, with recreation centers, pools, workshops, and something in the order of 200 clubs covering every interest a person could name. That last number is the one to pay attention to. 200 organized groups in a town this size means that the machinery for making a friend already exists and somebody is running it on Tuesday at 10. You do not have to be brave, you have to show up. The catch, and it is the same one that puts Sun City on the other list, is that this is an age-restricted world with very few young people in it. Some people find that peaceful, others find it slowly disorienting. Housing stock in the older sections is genuinely old and needs inspecting properly. And when you sell, your buyer pool is retirees who want this specific life, which is a narrower market than a normal town. Green Valley is the answer for someone who wants the built-in social life and is clear-eyed about what they are trading for it. And number one, Sierra Vista. 90 minutes southeast of Tucson, at about 4,600 feet, on a plain beneath the Huachuca Mountains. Here is the claim, and I do not make it loosely. Sierra Vista has the mildest year-round climate of any town of real size in Arizona. The elevation is doing it. Summer highs sit in the low 90s when Phoenix is over 110. Winters are cool and dry with sunshine almost every day, and snow that arrives rarely and leaves by lunchtime. There is no season here that traps you indoors, not one. In a state where most retirement locations require you to disappear for either 4 months of heat or 4 months of cold, this town asks nothing of you at all. And it is not isolated in the way you would expect a town with that climate to be. Fort Huachuca sits right next door, and a permanent military installation brings things a town of 45,000 would not otherwise have. A real hospital, a commissary, a steady professional population, services that do not depend on tourism. Retired military have been settling here for decades, and if you served, the practical advantages are substantial. Around it, some of the best birding in North America, Ramsey Canyon. The Huachuca's rising to over 9,000 feet with pine forest and trails, right at the edge of town. The catch: 90 minutes to Tucson is a real drive for a specialist appointment, and you will make it. The town itself is modern and spread out rather than historic, so if you wanted cobblestones, this is not that. Wind on that plain is a genuine feature, and some people never make peace with it. And it is close to the border, which means you should go and form your own view rather than accepting anyone else's. But look at what is actually on offer. The best weather in the state, a hospital in town, housing costs a fraction of Scottsdale, mountains at your door, and almost nobody talks about it. That is the pattern under all 12 of these. The towns everyone recommends are the towns everyone already moved to, which is precisely why they cost what they cost and feel how they feel. The towns that still work are the ones nobody has bothered to rank. So when you go looking, ask a different question than the one the brochure answers. Not where is nice. Ask what the summer high actually is at that elevation. Ask how far the hospital is in minutes, not miles. Ask what there is to do here on a Tuesday in February when nobody is visiting. And ask whether you can walk to anything at all. The people thriving in this state did not find a perfect town. They found the one whose catch they could live with, and they found it before they signed. If this was useful, subscribe, because next we go after the question that decides which of these towns is still worth owning a home in 20 years from now. It is not the heat, and it is not the price. It is the water, and the answer is not what you would guess.